What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the weekly Slither. I'm your host, DraketheTruSnake, and this week I want to talk about something very exciting, kind of cool, that I've found goes through the horror genre, but not talked about as much. And it's kind of a clever use of this, and that's some of my favorite uses of music in horror movies. Now, this isn't just about horror themes, even though I just did a podcast over on the Cake Drain SoundCloud, cheap shout out to that. But if you guys go check that out, this time I'm talking about just kind of the clever uses of songs, of the use of even the topic of music in horror films that kind of help with the mood or help set the scene, just helps in any sort of way. So we're going to look at a few things. First one I want to talk about is actually in Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the beginning. Yes, this is the prequel to the remake of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And there's a scene where it's a very violent scene, but they tie in the song Hush Little Baby. Because Ma Hewitt, I forget her name in the movie, is trying to calm down this girl who's tied to a table, but outside, Hoyt is beating this other one of her friends that's trying to do push-ups and be, making him do this workout while beating him with a police baton. It's a very intense, very agonizing scene, but the music and her singing adds that just creep factor that makes it even more unsettling. That I love how they used it in that movie. You wouldn't expect that song to be so creepy until you see this scene. So, very interesting. If you've seen the movie, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If not, y'all need to catch up on horror movies. Just saying. So, the second one I want to talk about is actually in the Strangers series. In both of the Strangers movies, music plays a huge role in the Strangers as characters. In the first one, there's a record player that's playing kind of old-timey country music, but it's there's a certain, I think it's a banjo or guitar sound that whenever there's one of the major scare scenes where it plays, and it really sets the mood of the area because they're stuck in this house in the middle of the woods or in the middle kind of a country setting. So that music helps in that setting. Now in the sequel, Strangers Pray the Night, they actually use 80s music to set the scene and to help to give atmosphere. And they use it in a way to where it doesn't take away from the scares, it doesn't take away from what's being done, but it helps set the atmosphere. Kind of a throwback, if you will, to like classic 80s slasher movies, but in a modern day setting. It's kind of a cool aspect there, the cool dynamic of 80s music in a modern setting with this intense horror film. So if you haven't seen either one of the Stranger movies, go watch them both. They're both amazing in my opinion, and if you disagree, we disagree. But I find them really entertaining and very scary, so very fun movies. Next is a movie that most people kind of shy away from when discussing horror films, at least from the female perspective. My wife doesn't like this movie at all. It is American Psycho. It's an early role of Christian Bale. There are some questionable scenes in it. But what I want to talk about is whenever he's going to kill somebody, he always talks about music. He talks about Phil Collins, Sussudio, Huey Lewis, and Hip to Be Square. He always talks about music, and right in the middle of his discussion, he cuts his friends to pieces. He chops people up after he talks about 80s music of the time. Of course, at the time, it was just pop music, but it was an interesting way of showing the dynamic of his character, because the duality there, because usually he's this very straight-laced, quiet, reserved person, and then all of a sudden he starts talking about music and he starts going crazy and he's very high energy, very happy, TV spokesperson voice, and that leads to him chopping up people and killing people, and it helps you to get into that mode of, oh, it's going to be bad because he's talking about music. And me being a music nerd myself, this really tied it in because it's like, oh, it's a horror movie about a guy who loves music who kills people listening to music. It's very interesting. So if you get a chance, I think some of the scenes are on YouTube, some of the less interesting scenes, but those killing scenes are very interesting, and it's interesting how they tied in the music to it as well. Next one, this one's a kind of a cult classic now, maybe even a lesser known sequel in this series, but it is Urban Legends Bloody Mary. It's in the Urban Legends series. It was one of the straight-to-DVD movies from the early 2000s, but I think this movie is very well done in a modern retelling of the legend. Pardon me, and also it tied in because in this setting, Mary dies in the 1950s, and she wants redemption and revenge. So whenever she appears over the radio, you hear this 50s love song. Now, it's an original song for the movie, but it's a very old school, romantic, like you would hear at a high school dance type song. But it just sets the mood, it brings in her character, brings in that flashback to when it happened, and all that gets brought in with this one song. And again, you can find the entire song on YouTube, and it's just an amazing song in general, but also it fits the movie so well. And if you haven't seen this movie, Kate Mara, who was in I believe she was Sue Storm in the new Fantastic Four movie. I think that was her name. It was Kate Mara. She's been in a lot of modern movies, and this was one of her first roles, so kind of a throwback to early in her career. So if you're a fan of hers, check out this movie. It's a really fun one. And also, last but not least, I've got to throw in my favorite all-time horror movie, Halloween, because the song I'm talking about isn't the theme itself. Again, this is not about the theme. This song goes in the first two movies. They brought it back in H2O. It's kind of a little nod. The remakes used a different version of it, but it's Mr. Sandman. This was a very idyllic 1950s, early 60s song. Kind of set this idyllic suburban atmosphere of everybody's happy, everyone's peaceful, it's a beautiful fall day, and then Michael Myers shows up in the middle of it. But it gives this whole setup to the area that you're going into. A very calming atmosphere, a very calm suburban area, and you know that evil's on its way. So I thought that was a very creative way to bring in that song, the music of the 50s and 60s, to make Haddonfield this anywhere town that anyone can feel at home in, and this could happen anywhere. So one of the many, many elements of why this movie is my favorite. Such a great movie, such great use of music. John Carpenter knows exactly what he's doing, and I cannot wait for the remake. I'll say it 1,000 times. I cannot wait to see the new remake. It's not a remake, it's a sequel. The new sequel that's coming out, because it's a direct sequel to the original. So forget all the brother and everything else part of it. It's just Michael Myers is the shape. It has Jamie Lee Curtis, has Nick Castle, who's the original Michael Myers in it. It's very exciting for me personally and any Halloween fan out there. So I'm going to quit rambling. Hope you guys enjoyed this list. If there's any other clever uses of music that maybe you guys know of that I didn't mention, or maybe some of these were new to you, post them in the comments below, and I may read them in the next episode. We're finally in October, so I'm excited about that. It's Halloween month. Halloween season is here, finally, and I cannot wait. Make sure you guys are checking in every week. Like I said before, my upload schedule is now Thursdays, because that works for my work schedule, and it's kind of a middle of the week way of getting stuff out to you guys a little easier. So if you guys have any ideas on what I should talk about next, or maybe something horror related that you guys are interested in, let me know, and I may talk about it on my next episode. I will talk to you guys next week. Also, don't forget to check out my podcast where I talked about my favorite horror themes on the Cake Drain SoundCloud. And also check out our Cake Drain YouTube channel if you haven't already. And also subscribe down below because you made it this far. Why not? And also make sure you check out my bro D-Rock over on DRWTO. He just returned to YouTube and just gave his story, his own personal life story and his testimony. So it's really cool to hear his background and things like that. So I hope to see you guys next time, and I will talk to you guys later. Peace out, and remember, breathe!